Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Am I audible? Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for coming back for our third block, and I think we've already alluded a little bit to technology and AI, particularly as a category of technology where rewilding can happen. And very appropriately, we have a session on wilding AI, which is a project that we're going to kind of explore, unveil, and kind of present to you in 3 acts, I hear. And then this is really, to me, it's always the elephant in the room in these conversations because it's like AI is happening at such an unprecedented pace. It feels omnipresent, often quite oppressive to like human agency and new forms of thinking. And I think that the large-scale generative AI hype has also been driving a lot of powerful actors like governments and big tech towards like narrative closure is the term. And stabilization. It's almost like no one else is allowed to imagine what an alternative future of AI and a technosocial future is like. And of course, the black box metaphor has been used and reused, and it's still appropriate for this kind of thinking. So with Meet and to envision an AI that can be more wild and experimental and free and to work towards this, I'm joined by Dr. Beth Coleman, Marice Jones, and Pia Baltazar, who will walk us through this kind of wilding AI context. So yeah, a big round of applause for our beautiful panel. And I think there is a small kind of public service announcement.
Yeah, so the whole Wilding AI project is collective and public, so we want to have conversations with people about these topics. I think all of you have been here for the last 2 days, and we talked about a lot of different ways that we can think about wilding, wildness, ferality, and all these questions. So we really want to invite you to like have a conversation with us around these topics. So we're gonna like have 3 acts. We're gonna go into like 3 different concepts that we've been exploring through the project. One is the idea of wilding itself, which Beth is going to prompt us a bit, and then we're going to have a conversation. But that conversation is supposed to be together. So like think of questions. We don't want to keep all the questions to the end, but we want to like have them a bit more interactive. And then Pia is going to prompt us with embodiment. And same concept. If you have any thoughts on embodiment, wildness, feel free to chime in at any point. And then I'm going to talk about the quest at the very end.
Yeah. So I couldn't sit anymore. I'm a little bit antsy, and if you need to get up and move around, there's some space. And we will kind of call people in terms of what are you thinking about here as we go through our different movements. So we'll start with wilding. Am I doing clicking in the right way? Ah, yeah. There you go. Wilding. So wilding. Wilding is trying to mark, I mean, I really appreciate rewilding as a material practice that people have been talking about over the past 2 days. And the reason we were using wilding to do some work for us is exactly as you said, there's a level of foreclosure and this kind of fake domestication of here's this technology, it's supposed to be built into your everyday life. Many of us don't really know what it is or how it works or really what it should be used for, but on the other end, it's burning down the earth. So you're like, how is this normal? So the idea of wild, at the very least, is to try to reopen things, and it's to create some distance and opportunity for critical interrogation, but it is also trying to build kinship with aliens. And, you know, hello, Octavia Butler, like, how do we build good relations, and that's sustainable in all kinds of ways, with something that could be productive in a way that's bigger than just efficiency?
Yeah.
But we're having very little space to see that and to do it because mostly we're just like shouting into a tiny text box and things come out of it. And much of that doesn't seem right. So the Wilding AI project, and if you think wilding is a kind of false construction to civilized and wild. Yeah, of course it's a false construction, and happily people have been like basking in, let's tear up those boundaries all through the past 2 days. So we're using this as an artifice to get us to an experimental stage. I don't know why the machine, okay. So this is us as the collective. This is us at Monum in Berlin, where we did like a 10-day residency and then an open studio. And we just had an open studio as, I think, the opening event of Fiber at 4D, which was incredible. Just have this space together, and many of the collaborators are sitting around in the theater. And essentially what we're doing is building up practices where we're engaging with primarily using LLMs, but also other means to use language and narrative to direct spatialized audio. So Monum uses a 4D sound system. 4D sound system is the 4D sound system. And this is what some of this looks like. So our friend Kasper Strock, the filmmaker, came to the studio and shot some of this for us. Let me see if I can get this to play. Just so you can get a sense of the movement of this stuff in space.
Video.
Not playing. Oh, we had it before.
Oh, maybe space bar?
Once more back.
No.
Oh, there we go.
That's wild.
Oh, it's playing, but it's playing on a different screen.
Oh.
Well, you can imagine many people in a room assembled around workstations and trying to use the choreography of space and building structures in space as a way of animating a sense of, here we have kind of agents in motion. And, it's all morphed out in the way that he shot it, but you get a sense of kind of filling the space in this way. So that is kind of the prelude in terms of where we started with wilding. And we all have particular practices that we're coming from as individual artists and curators and makers. And sound, for me, it's very much coming from this work on Octavia Butler AI and other possible worlds. And both Marice and Pia have practices that they're going to allude to as we're talking through the bigger project. So before we get to embodiment, we're going to try to practice what we've asked for. Some thoughts, throwing anything back about wilding and things you've heard or things that you haven't heard that you want to add to the conversation. Magically, that's what Fiber has invited us all to do. I can put this down.
Cool.
How shy are you guys going to be?
Right. Maybe we can shift the lights to the audience.
Actually,
breaking the fourth wall.
No, because the thing is, I hate it when people do that. But I also hate it when people ask me to
You're
talk.
basking comfortably in the shadows.
Yeah. Deb, anything you can add to this feeling of wildness or this sense of wildness and what work we wanted to do?
Hi, everyone. I'm also part of the team. Wilding has been, for me, what's great about this is that we all have different ways of thinking about. Oh, thanks. What's been really interesting is that we all have different ways of thinking about wilding. And for me, wilding has been about interrogating my own relationship to wildness and my desire for control, my desire for comfort and understanding, and listening to what that says. So what does that say? That says that, okay, well, it feels like a space where there is something that is let go of. A wild space is something that is, difficult to understand, difficult to parse, is dangerous. And so to me, just because of who I am, I'm like, well, that makes me question that. Why am I discarding something? What exists in the gap? what exists in the place that I'm told is unsafe, and what exists in the place that I'm told to throw away in pursuit of this control and pursuit of this knowing. And how do I act knowing that? So that's where I came from. Someone else?
So, Pia, do you want to advance the slide and talk about embodiment?
Sure. If I manage to do it. This thing is
Here,
like
let me try.
uncooperative completely.
Yeah.
Look, I got the hang of it.
So yeah. I want to talk about embodiment because it's like very at the center of my research, let's say. And I'm going to talk about it by started from the opposite somehow. And through our process, we've been spending a lot of time troubleshooting technical systems. and in particular, we've been working with these spatialization techniques. And one thing that is in almost every sound spatialization technique is that they use the system of coordinates, which are 3D Euclidean coordinates. And I think that's something that is really important because this is a very visual metaphor, and it's a visual metaphor that is very informed by Western science and the way that we abstract ourselves from a given situation and from our bodies. And this is something that I'm kind of revolving around constantly, like this question of modernist science as this like container, space as an empty container for things that are existing inside of it. And I'm going to cite Simon Penny, which is a researcher that we are reading together currently.
Which reading group if you want to join.
Yeah, and that's a reading group with amazing people. And so he says, to place oneself outside oneself is a radically disembodying cognitive act that Westerners are so utterly naturalized to do that we don't realize we are doing it. And I think it is very, very important because it's everywhere. And for me, that makes me think about modernism, or like Western science, as an epistemology of dissociation. And as maybe Mackenzie work, she's a scholar, and she says that trans women were like specialists in dissociation. So I think I can say a little bit about that. Yeah, and I think like this thing is also very interesting in the context of AI, because somehow AI today, or what we call AI, because also the name of what is called AI, how AI was like coined, which is in Dartmouth in 1966 by 5 white men of 50 years old trying to make very reductionist kind of informatics and computer science, is very different from the AI that we have now. But also AI is at the heart of a project, of a political project that is techno-feudalism or necro-capitalism, which basically is really around this idea of that the world is fucked, the world is already dying, and there's this whole, test creel, maybe you have heard about that, ideology that has been analyzed by Torres and, what's her name?
Timnit.
Gibru.
Yeah, where basically like this couple of white guys with a lot of money and power are just saying, okay, so Earth is fucked, the life on Earth is fucked, let's upload our minds, like our very brilliant minds, which are actually mediocre minds, into some kind of computer form and send that to Mars when we have infinite resources and we can live bodiless, right? And I think this is very, very, very important because this is like extreme dissociation, right? And yeah, and so now us as a collective, we're trying to go, I don't know if it's against that, but at least somewhere else, and trying to go more into the body and the connection and all that. And how do we do that? And especially like citing Audre Lorde this time, like the master tools will never dismantle the master's house. So we're using AI, and we are using AI against AI, but which AI, what do we call AI, and how do we do that? And that's the whole thing. And so, and I think it's like this question is really somehow brings us back to, I think, like the connection to emotion. And Cassandra talked about grief, and I think grief is a very important emotion to feel right now, while a genocide is happening, not that far. And like an ecocide is also happening, and these are very connected. And all of these things are also very connected with this dissociative epistemology. And in particular, there is one framework like that ideological framework that is very at the center of like this text creel or the mindset, as I call it, epistemology, or is it an epistemology? But like this ideology is like effective altruism, where somehow what they think is that they would kind of like cut themselves from the direct empathy. Like it's not very important if like people are dying in Palestine, or like many people will die, and actually they think that we should reduce the world population to like less than 1 billion, which means killing 7 billion people. and like for the sake of using rationality and calculation as a more effective means to build the future, which is a very, I don't know, very incel or whatever way of thinking. And against that, there is like this way of thinking about. I'm going to cite a friend of ours and also a member of the Wilding AI Collective, which is called Tegan Maharaj. And Tegan is an AI researcher in Montreal, and they are doing a lot of counseling about AI and risk. And they made this article recently, and I'm gonna read a few words about that because I think it's really important. What they say is that, so they talk about risk, and the way in this article they connect AI and their own medical condition, which they had a condition recently. And what they say is intuitively risks are things that feel like pain. And I'm not gonna, I'm gonna read it. It's short and it's good. If we want to address risk, we need to notice and acknowledge pain, the ways it circumscribes and curtails our certainty, clarity, resilience, and trust. Do not accept being in and ignoring pain. Do not accept closing off any part of you for any reason. And don't accept anyone doing it to anyone else. Do not settle for a finite experience of being. Don't let the bastards grind you down. Yeah.
Maybe I have a quick response, because when we talk about disembodiment of AI, there's the disembodiment of AI from the body, from the ecocide that is happening on the background. But often, because I'm also close to the discipline of like data science, and there's a bit of mysticism around AI is not one tool. No. It's an ecosystem of tools, like the data sets going into like base models, going into downstream tools that use the base models. There's layers of like sense making in between that are super intentional with a lot of emergent phenomena. If you ask a data science, okay, they're going to explain to you how a transformer model works, but often the meaning that is encoded, they don't know. They're like, I don't know why this is happening, but it is. If I throw this much data and this much computing power, this happens. I don't know why. It's great. It resembles intelligence, I guess. And this kind of disembodiment is really important to tell, I think, an audience, because when we talk about AI, often we're not talking about the same thing, like in the same conversation.
Yeah, but some of it, part of our responsibility is to separate noise from signal. What we have in this first generation, this very speedy generation of LLM foundation models, is brute force training.
Yeah.
So there's nothing subtle. It's just like everything, and if it's re-legislated in the United States, everything under copyright will also be shoveled into the machine.
Yeah. Here's a messy archive. Do something with it.
And it's this idea that intelligence will emerge. These things are great. Just look at this. Type something in, and wonderful things happen. But that it's all language, and language signals for humans intelligence. And it's hard for us to make a distinction between language and syntax that's viable and collecting of sense, a summary that's viable, and intelligence. And we're really back at square one in terms of the Turing test, because it's about imitation.
Yeah.
It is such a it's a phenomenal imitation of how we think, or at least how we use language, that and because of the level of complexity. I mean, we saw this more clearly with image models, where you would type into DALL-E something and you get something bad, really, but I'm not
stereotypical. Yeah.
And when people understood that, their text was being reinterpreted by the model. Like there's a level of, it has to be recoded, one, for the protection of OpenAI, so they don't get like Nazis on frogs or whatever it is. But that your language is not one for one, that there's all this interpolation that is masked.
Yeah.
And just the basic stuff of like, how does this machine work? What is going on here? Like, this is, it's shuttered. And none of that seems appropriate or right or fair. And it's not like it went so well with social media.
Yeah, for sure. Because you know what comes to mind here, and maybe I want to like go a level more meta, because language itself seems to me like a model.
Yeah.
That is again requires, because there's a lot of like politics of linguistic discourse, and I think computer science went from like, oh, we have natural language processing now as a field, so we can turn language into numbers, we can learn statistics and uncover this model. But language moves very quickly. There's canonical kind of narratives, and then there's like a lot of accents and a lot of like languages that are not well documented, they don't go into that intelligence that is modeled. And no one is going from this like problematics of language to the problematics of large language models.
Right.
So how do we also connect that?
Right. So I mean, you named it in terms of the only language in the world is English.
Yeah.
And you're like, but that's not true. But you're like, well, English, and then Dutch is emergent and German is emergent, because there's enough of it on the kind of essentially English language internet. And you're just like, when you say to people, why are these systems English? There's an actual reason why they're English, but it just is a default in terms of what the world looks like. And so there was an experiment that was done at Stanford where the researchers used text written by people who were English as second language. And the question the machine was asked is, distinguish between what was written by a machine and what was written by a human. And when the machine was given like SAT tests, or I don't know, like whatever, like things that were written by native English speakers, and then things that were written by English as second language, the machine coded the English as second language as, oh, clearly this is the product of a machine. So that bias, like the machine made the right assessment because it's trained to speak the Queen's. Like it's not trained to be like, you speak English, but you come from Taiwan, so you've got a different structure of language in your head. Like, so it's just like, oh, you're a machine too. You're like, yes, English as second language speakers are machines. Like, so just like you see the way like it's insidious, and it was following its programming.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is one pocket of disembodiment. And I think I always think of like the anatomy of an AI system, kind of that map of like all the socio-technical processes that inform what AI is. So how important is this kind of mapping, perhaps, in the work that you do, of like having a systems thinking towards what is AI?
I'm not sure if we've really approached it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that do incredible work, and like in our own practices, like Beth and I are policy scholars, so
Yeah.
we also look AI from that perspective. But I think with this project, it's really like our philosophy is like fucking around and finding out. So, like going back to embodiment, like getting your hands dirty, like
Yeah.
like getting into the machine and like taking it apart and like reconfiguring it. And only by having that experience, we can start to grasp what it actually means, and like how we, what these beautiful system diagrams that like Kate Crawford was making actually means when you get into the technology. Exactly. So the project really like focused on that, and like, and the process of wilding in that way is to take it apart and push it somewhere else. Only by like taking it apart and like maybe understanding how it works a bit better, we can come to understand in which other directions we might want to push it, and what other ways of working with it. Or like you were saying, like the master's tools might not dismantle the master's house, but we need to understand the tools in order to understand what we want to dismantle, and in order to also understand ourselves of like what we might want to do differently. So that's what the project has really been about for the last year.
I would even go further. I would say that actually by opening up the tool, it becomes something different almost. That you demystified this kind of objective desire into something that you can work with.
I think I can answer a little bit to your question, because the way we've been working, I've talked about a little bit about that for this, so sorry for whoever, but the structure, like the software structure that we use was like a stack of 2 LLMs, and basically feeding language to a first LLM, which was outputting like trajectories, XYZ trajectories, which, as I said, is a problem in itself, and like kind of like emotional trajectories, and this feeding that into a second LLM, and this one would just put curves. And the problem with that, we did that because, I mean, LLM are impressive and they work well, so we can use them with like little money, because we had very little money to do this project. And but if we want to go into like the end game of this project is to create some sonic agents. I mean, not the end game, but like the initial, seed intention, like the destination is like try to create sonic agents. But the sonic agents, they like the idea is having a metaphor of our bodies are in a world, right? And they exist in different ways. They have rhythm. They are way to occupy space, they have way to breathe and shiver and whatever, all of these little things that make a behavior. And LLMs are very bad at that, because LLM works with tokens, which are not exactly words, but like around this scale.
Units.
Units. And so we have like a few units. And so I think for me, at least, the main takeover of this project in terms of technical development was we need to build projects that really work with other kinds of models, which are more based on trying to imitate profiles and continuity on a very small granular level, if we want to have some kind of liveliness to it.
Yeah. So that's beyond generative models, or
like there are some generative models that do that, and like actually we are like trying to build some research projects with like different labs in Canada to make this happen, and through a process of research creation. But there is nothing that is ready to use. But that's also like the big question, because like with Marice, we've been running this project for 1 year, consultation on AI for artists. And what are the AI tools that artists want? And somehow they want things that the LLM don't do, which is being able to train your own data, being local, being ecologically responsive, being sober, All of these things, which
Yeah.
LLM are the exact opposite of, right?
Amen. Amen. No, I mean, I think that there's a lot I want to ask you about, like openness and scale as a way of closure.
Yeah.
But then I want to be a little bit less selfish here and open up to the audience. Because we've been talking about embodiment, I think, for a good while. And I was wondering if someone has a thought. I think there's someone on the left there.
Yeah,
There's a
two
mic coming your way.
questions.
There's a mic coming your way. Hang on tight.
Maybe I can try to do it without. Is it okay without mic?
No.
No, use it.
I should.
Gotta use it.
Thanks for the talk so far. I have a lot of questions, especially when thinking about embodiment, or when you were relating it into the more philosophical context of how our world is structured and how capitalism is structured. It works by compartmentalization. So only if we are put into a little box, we can ignore what's happening around us, what the poor person that sits outside of this nice space is having in their life, what is happening from here to Palestine, from all over the world. Then when going to technology, and especially large language models and AI, we talk about logical systems, or things that we consider as logic in that sense. But that also work by compartmentalizing problems in that sense. So how can something that follows rules become wild, or can truly be wild in itself? Maybe I'm going a little bit too far with the question because I'm an impatient person. But what are your thoughts so far, or what could you find out so far, other than maybe building your own model that is actually wild?
Well, I think like the collective, we're like, what, 8, 10, 12 fluctuating amounts of people coming in and out. But most of us have been working with AI, algorithmic tools, digital arts tools since like decades. Like with Deb, for instance, we ran like an early AI lab in like 2017, 2018, something like that in Tokyo. We did one in Montreal, and that was like the early times of generative AI. So I think you were mentioning it like earlier, like the GPT-2 or something, which like
That was the time.
looked like language, but it like was weird, and that's why a lot of artists were using it. Or like other things like char-RNN, which was like predicting a character, not a word at the time. Or sample RNN, which was like a very early kind of sample generating sound, and it would just create everything with like this sound. Like you have a kick, but it always had that kind of noise on top of it. So like there was a certain arguably wildness to those early tools, especially because they were kind of broken, and that was actually the generative part, as you're saying. Like that was actually creating like outputs that were generative in the sense of like this might actually be something new. Whereas now, like with the progress, LLMs, image generators, it's just a reproduction of ever more of the same. Yeah, you can like make Nazi frogs on like generate, and like arguably Nazi frogs are like something new, but are they really? Are these the kind of new things that we really want to generate? So I think at least I carry like a lot of that inspiration from the early days, and like the idea of wilding and like opening up the box is really to like keep those glitches and keep those weird things kind of open. But that comes with a lot of responsibility, right? It's like when I do an art project and like I have an LLM and it just like misrepresents the world, and I find that fun and inspiring, that's great. But if I'm like putting facial recognition technologies and cameras all over Amsterdam, there's a very different kind of responsibility that comes to like treating these systems. Maybe we don't want them being wild, like misidentifying people. Maybe we don't want them at all. That's another question that we can get into. But yeah, we can talk a bit more about like the process of wilding when we talk about the quest, because I think it has been like at the heart of like the wild, not necessarily as this like romantic destination, which is a very Western kind of way of like, I'm German, and like we have the whole kind of romantic like idea of nature, and like we go out in nature and take walks in like the Alps or something. It's like so yeah, we can talk about that in a second a bit more, but I'm not sure if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, but to just go a little bit more on that, it's interesting because if we were getting a strictly like, this is just a one-to-one prediction machine, we would in some ways be able to track how mechanistic it is. And certainly we have enough times when you're like, oh, your robot wrote this email because it's evacuated of any human affect. It's just boring as hell. But what we're seeing is a level of liveliness that is interesting and disconcerting, because we're way past, like this, we're beyond supervised learning. We're outside of a strictly controlled and understandable, like what the logic systems are. So it's actually an interesting moment. The rest of it, the envelope of what are the market forces and how are they strapped down so they behave properly, all of that fits into the matrix that you described in terms of what are they selling? You know, what's the future? Then you've got the X-risk version of it of actually 10 rich people are going to go to Mars, or their heads in a vat will, and everybody else will just can fuck off. So yes, we seem to have several different types of logics happening. They all seem pretty murderous in the end.
Very incriminating.
And it's also interesting to replace that in the history of AI, because as I said, the AI, the terms were coined by these 5 guys, which were trying to make finding implicit principles in the world, and like trying to like chess is the paradigm of their kind of AI. Chess is based on a set of very clear rules, and then it's really easy using like good old-fashioned AI, as they call it, to make it work. And the neural networks were like kind of invented or exploring a little bit later, and the people that were working on neural networks were ostracized. They went out of the community. They didn't work in the field of computer science, and they were more linked to cybernetics. And they were like, like they were really ostracized. And after a while, I think it's in the 80s or 90s, it began to work because it's messy. It's working in a messy way, and that's what makes it able to recognize style, or like all of these things that today it's good at, because it's just a huge statistical parrot. And you were mentioning imitation, and I'm all for renaming artificial intelligence to algorithmic imitation, because that's what it does. It has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with imitation. So, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to intervene a bit, because when we talk about...
There's also one more person.
Yeah, there's a person behind.
Yeah. I just need to respond to that real quick, and then we can have that.
We're going to get there.
I want to intervene because if we talk about algorithmic imitation, we talk about like one very particular set of what we call now AI, which is like large language models, and which is like image generators. But there's a lot of other ways that AI is being deployed. So like a facial recognition system is not trying to imitate anything. So I think that's also another thing. When we talk about AI, what do we actually talk about?
Exactly.
Do we talk about generative AI and LLMs and that being modeled intelligence, which would actually discard a lot of the other systems that are out there? It's like machine vision system in warfare drones, like detecting.
Yeah, they're not generative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
they
that's something to
generate
keep in mind.
targets.
Yeah,
that's true.
As we
automated
know,
target
they
generation.
generate targets.
And all of the recommendation algorithms, which are another kind of AI, they are doing a lot of harm already in our mental ecology and the way that it makes us. I mean, like the power of fucking Instagram, that can you make brain rot for days? I mean, it's a catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
And it's AI, but like in the other way, actually. So there was another question.
Yeah, I think it actually connects with what was just discussed a little bit anyway. You mentioned earlier about the potential need for AI systems that go beyond large language models, maybe beyond that imitation in a sense, more embodied with the shivers to connect it to that. But in the end, whether you're building a classifying model or a generative model, you do need a data set. So that's what I would be really interested in. What's the data set? How does this actually work? Do we connect people to machines that measure their hormones and try to get that into the, or how do you see this?
Are we asking about wilder data sets? How do we?
Wild data sets?
I don't know.
Embodiment and what kind of machines are we making?
But I think it's also like somehow because all of this Western epistemology is also a big colonial project. And the colonization is not only March, but it's also Mars, not March. But it's also our interiority, right? And that's, Deleuze after Foucault saying we're going from a society of discipline to a society of control, where actually we don't need external pressure to control us, because the machines and the coexistence of machines and our mental ecology makes it we just embody this in our own thing. And I think that right now, most of the next, because the attention is there. I mean, our attention has been completely commodified. So what's next to commodify? Because capitalism and necro-capitalism always needs the next frontier of what to commodify. Yeah. And it's our emotions and it's our bodies. And that's why it's very convenient that we have a lot of, the quantified self and the smart watches and trying to figure out our emotions and using that. That's the next step, because why it doesn't work, ultimately AI perfectly, I mean, at least in the kind of dream of the tech bros, is always boils down to not having a body. There is this article by the founder of, what's his name? This thing where you draw on your keyboard. But anyway, the article is called "The Body is a Missing Link for Truly Intelligent Machines." And that's the thing, because most AI is able to produce artifacts based on other artifacts. But what makes us intelligent is our situatedness, the fact that we are somewhere in the world, that we experience pain, suffering, empathy, and that we take our decisions based on that. And because also we have a huge number of sensors through which we relate to the world. And no technology will be able to emulate this. So having the human body as a substrate is what actually, I mean, Elon Musk and these guys, they are thinking about, oh yeah, the body is a substrate for a higher form of intelligence. Frightening.
There's also interest in training small models and local models that are more environmental, but also facilitate around contextual knowledge that would include inscribing materiality. So if you've got a rare book library, it's not just the content of the book, it's the binding of the book. There's a whole bunch of things. So, I mean, we're still in a place where it has to be turned into something that's readable by a machine, and that translation, and in looking at this kind of field of self-sufficient machines that Matteo was walking us through, in terms of it is self-generating with light, it is responsive to the environment, it is an IoT locality, but built with this idea of sustained within this context, metaphorically, these kinds of ways of working, that's an actual way of working, but in what ways can we bring that into small modeling? I'm not suggesting and now we're going to be good. I mean, often we still have foundation models on the back end, because that's how it's very functional and very good. And then there's also the imaginations around in what context would we want a whole kind of cybernetic mapping of our system. Like somebody, I mean, it's always a medical condition, but somebody has like a particular medical condition, and if you read all of these complex signs, not just one thing about like insulin levels, can we know more, can we manage it better? And you're like, yeah, I mean, that's the techno-fantasy, and maybe it could be true, but there's so much other apparatus around it, why that stuff almost always ends up being, you know, complicated at best.
And the conversation about like small language models I particularly love.
Yeah.
Because I think large language models sell a dream, and I think it's nice to call it out loud. And it's this idea is that, okay, we don't understand so much how things are, but if we take so much data, like all the internet, everything that has ever been said, put it into such strong high-performance computers with NVIDIA chips and let it run for half a year, we're going to get intelligence. And that's the idea. We're going to get like emergent behavior that is incredible. And the thing is, you just bombarded it with so much inference and compute. And that's hard to replicate also. That's, to me, that's part of the closure. But now we're like, okay, no, they're too big and too disembodied, and we cannot interpret the harm. So let's look at small models. But when people do that, they're like, oh, I have to give up that dream that I had about the data set and the big computer knowing everything, this kind of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, huge computer that is Mother Earth. And how do we deal with this kind of tension of like, we're giving up something now. We're going to have to make a very situated, custom-made model where the data plays a very specific role and it's put in a very specific. How do we deal with that?
The everything is not everything is what made it to the internet, and it's very biased because it's very white, it's very Western, and like some person, I don't know which.
It is a fantasy for sure.
It is a very toxic fantasy of white guys again. It's a big
I think you wanted to follow up on your
Yeah, listening to you, I think what probably makes more sense is looking at classifier systems for emotional intelligence as an interesting like addition to large language models, because that could actually emulate our own ability of mirroring others' emotions and be empathetic, right?
But why would we want that?
Yeah,
I'm not saying we want that, but that's kind of what the incentive system is to build something like that. It seems like a natural next step.
Gadi, do you want to weigh in on the empathy machines of our current state of LLMs and the big deception?
The mic is going to have to travel a little bit.
Yeah,
Because there's 2 more.
just to, I mean, before Gadi goes, I just wanted to talk a bit about the sonic agents and the way that at least I think about them. And this whole idea of like emotion recognition, etc. Like it's again the imitation, but why do we want to imitate? So for me, it's quite interesting to just let it be its own thing, and then engage. It's kind of like the Matteo's sound pieces. I'm doing like similar work with like embedded machine learning that like respond to the environment, but it's really like meeting that then on eye level and having like a relationship with the thing that has its kind of own way of being and its own way of like working. Because if we like put it into like this humanist box again, that's like another kind of colonizing project. So do we really want that? And sometimes maybe, but
Free the AI.
Sorry, Gadi.
Yeah, speaking of colonization, I mean, so I'm part of the Wilding AI collective, right? And at the moment, my focus is very much on the topic of simulated emotional intelligence, which is something that has merged quite dramatically in sort of consumer level interfaces when it comes to LLMs in the last year. And I think it's very unsettling. I mean, if you look at the statistics, which they're easily accessible, there's an increasing number of people that use ChatGPT like a therapist, for instance, right? Anybody in a moment of weakness with a touch point for everything cognitive can have a little conversation about their feelings with these things. And if you do, you'll find they'll increasingly behave in a way that is very accommodating to whichever sort of I don't know, sort of the equivalent of an online therapist or something, you know? And my perception of this is that this is stemming from an effort in UX design, actually. And by and large, there is an incentive that is not often talked about, but all these tools that we use when it comes to large language models specifically, these are businesses, right? And engagement is part of the imperative there. So I'm quite interested in the sort of ability of specifically large language models to function as a building block of an emotional inference system for artistic gestures, right? And that has led me down this rabbit hole where what I'm doing now, I'm trying to neutralize these aspects in the tools that I use and to sort of try to gauge what the optimal cognitive distance is between a human being and such linguistically competent device that is also capable at that point to simulate some kind of emotional response, right? What I suspect is that this is kind of creeping in at the moment in a way that keeps us very much unawares of a new level of sort of cognitive grafting that is very difficult for almost anyone, I think, to realize is happening. And maybe if you're talking to an LLM, that can be relatively obvious if you're thinking about it. But as you were saying, you know, these tools then creep into all kinds of marketing and you know, other kinds of devices and interfaces, and suddenly you have a series of algorithms that is trying to engage with a part of your cognition that is not evolved to engage with anything other than a human being, right? And it's very much at a subconscious level. So that's what I'm doing.
And one of the things that I realized the other day, because I was using ChatGPT, which I don't do very often, is why does it speak in a first person?
Oh yeah,
right? That is very important. That it speaks in the first person.
But I agree, it's a UX choice. All of
It's
these
a
things,
UX choice.
they're not
And
naturally speaking in first person.
No, and it's also like related to this thing of making it as like I think this has a lot to do with like AGI, which for me is a myth, which is a kind of a replacement for God, which is a very powerful way to obfuscate or like to hide the fact that behind its behavior there is a set of rules that are set by like always the same guys, like the five same guys, and the only criterion on which it decides is profit and like trying to like commodify something like attention or emotions or whatever. So like this thing about having it saying I and speaking in the first person is a very it's a really strong swindle, I think.
Yeah, but it's really an emotional trigger where like someone is like, if you speak with I, your ability to persuade is a bit better, and then they just kind of in the master prompt or something always speak from the I. And that's often what happens. How are we doing on time? Should we maybe move to the other?
I think there was a question.
Shall I move to the quest?
There was another question? No? Okay.
Okay, looks like we can move to the quest.
To the quest.
The quest.
Yeah, I wanted to talk. Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. I wanted to talk a bit about the quest. The idea of the quest is something that came up quite recently. We did like a workshop with the collective on storytelling and how we might integrate that in like the pieces that we're going to develop. And the idea of the quest came out, and it's something that resonated with me a lot, because if we think of the wild not as this kind of like binary of like there's the wild space, then there's the civilized space, but like wild as like a multiplicity of places that are not here, that are not the fort, as you like so eloquently put it in the technology of the surround. So the wild becomes this kind of more intangible place, and when we do the process of wilding, when we like try to go out there, we might not necessarily know where we're going, because it's new. It's like maybe truly generative. So thinking about if we don't know where we're going, what do we actually have? The only thing that we can hold on to is like how we are going there and with whom we are going. and like how we support each other, but then also like what we might encounter on the way, and the friends that we make on the way, is definitely so eloquently put it. And I think this is kind of like one of the agendas of the project, to propose wilding as a way to do things differently. The dominant paradigm, the big tech paradigm, the algorithmic imitation, the prediction machines are all about, in the end, about control and about predicting the future, where the future is inherently unpredictable. So the only thing that we can really control is like how we're going there. So for us, that means we do it in public, like here. We have conversations with people. We do it collectively. It's a collective effort. We need each other, but that also relates to the technology. It's like the technology is very much part of that collective effort. So, and for me, that very much became evident in another project that I did, which is called Feral.ai, which similar to Matteo's like Sound Aid, not nearly as beautiful as them. I basically like embedded sonic agents into Raspberry Pis, and then in September I went into the swamps and like let the agent be free, and it was listening to its environment. It was like using small language models to actually like write diaries about its experiences, and in the exhibition it would then recount like, oh, I was listening to birds on my quest into the wild, and it was amazing. But what really became evident there was it took so much care to bring these very sensitive devices into the swamps, which is like probably the most hostile place that you can bring electronics to, because it's like, it's humid, it's water, it's like mushy. So it took so much care, the process of like wilding the technology and like placing it there. And it was only something that we could do together. And that was like really an aha moment, because like the idea, like wildness sounds scary. It sounds like the opposite of careful. It sounds like ferocious. It sounds like violent, etc. But actually, like by the process of wilding the technology, it was the opposite. It was like a very careful process. So I think that's something that we're like carrying in the project as well. We might not know where we're going, but we're going collectively, and we're like trying to take care of each other while we're going. Which is a very different model than like big tech corporations are implementing.
Absolutely. So. I think here, I immediately think of Walter Benjamin, and then maybe invite him into the conversation of, he has this essay called The Task of the Translator, basically where he mentions that translation is not a neutral act. Is if you're trying to translate something in another language or another format, you are also kind of giving a new life or a new agency to this translation. And to me, I wonder, if you make these creatures and put them out into the wild as part of rewilding, are we wilding technology, or is it kind of creating new technology that is wild?
That's a good question. I think Stacy, like yesterday, put it very eloquently, where it's like there is agency in wildness. So like, I think it's a bit of both in the end, if that's the case.
I wasn't there yesterday, but I know very well Navid, and I'm sure they talked about transduction. Yeah. And so transduction is another way to look at it, because transduction also was like coined by Simondon, and that's the becoming of one's, like the process of subjectivation of a person, like an entity, in relationship to technology, where there is a kind of evolution to find another way of being. And I think that's really important. And I was thinking about something I think Sandra said about like the pigeons being wild, and because like somehow like there is like the wildness is maybe something to find inside of where we are, like, because like again the colonial process is conquest, right? We try to find the wildness around and colonize it, and like extend our grasp of the world through colonization, where maybe the quest is trying to go to the ways that are scary, like not the places that are scary, the places that we didn't know, the places that we wouldn't look into, and all of these things, there's a lot to discover.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's why I super appreciate like walking into this room for the first time yesterday in the keynotes and descending into the deep ocean
Yeah.
and talking through different lenses and incredible work, how to explore but build relations, and just the question you asked, like, how is this practice done so it's not extractive, and when are we okay with not knowing? And so, I mean, I want more of the oceanic experience. I don't know how that translates into technology, but I was like, yeah, that's the space.
I agree, and I think as someone who works a lot with tech, I'm always kind of playing or like flirting with this question. But what I see is that, okay, with birds, they're like biological bodies. With tech, a little bit less. And to me, I'm working with the technology, and there's also a lot of noise. And to me, it feels like noise. And it's hard for me to distinguish, is this noise or is this a truly wild process happening that is worth meditating on? And I know there's politics to that and problematics. But have you encountered this question in your work? And again, I'm being very selfish because I'm struggling with this.
I think maybe like the question is, technology doesn't exist out of a practice of a human using technology.
Yeah.
So like the noise it's maybe something that doesn't fit to your mental frame.
Yeah.
And if you looked at it through another frame, you would find a pattern.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, so I guess noise is contextual, and that maybe answers the question.
Yeah.
And there's a recent paper out of Cornell where they show that different systems can talk to each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're having their own conversations, or that seems to be emergent behavior, which I'm not sure that's just something else.
Yeah, but if the tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it.
Did it really fall?
Like, they did produce a sound.
Yeah, but the thing is, but we know the trees talk to each other. So
Yeah.
decentering the part
That
we
is
play,
true.
but it also seems that the machines are talking to each other.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have AI-generated slop that feeds into an AI-curated feed, read by AI-curated bots that consume the content, and you can automate social media. If that's the death of social media, I'm actually here for it. So.
What a great way to fuck up the climate.
Let's see if we have...
Yeah.
I think we've got some pictures.
We have a picture. We have a picture of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, that's a fellowship. Which ones die before the next book?
I don't know.
It's dark.
I hope Gaddy doesn't die. I like Gaddy.
Wizard. Malu's not here, but Malu is a native daughter who was in Berlin with us and was hanging out on Thursday. I mean, people have come from most of the parts of the globe, and that's quite nice to have just different practices, different voices, and, you know, at least we're going to have fun before we destroy the earth.
Or maybe not destroy it in the process. You never know. I do have a question kind of relating to this, and I see the time now. But I think this conversation was wonderful because I think it captures a little bit the spirit of your work.
It was a bit wild, yeah.
It was a little bit wild.
We went a lot of places.
And we went everywhere. My ADHD brain is really happy. But then I want to ground this a little bit, and I want to ask you what is next for the project, and how can we follow and participate?
We're working on a website, wilding.ai. I bought the domain like 1.5 years ago, but nothing happened since then.
Refresh vigorously until then.
What else? Next for the project, after this, we're going to Montreal.
For a month.
For a month. Like the first phase of the project was funded by the Goethe Institute Co-Production Fund. So we're on the hook for producing something. So the idea is to have a 2-week residency in Montreal, at the Université de Montréal and at the Society for Arts and Technology, and present something. And UQAM. During MUTEC. And then we'll see. I mean, we have had a lot of great conversations here during Fiber. It feels like like people are resonating with the things that we do and how we do them, and that's really wonderful. Like the open lab was amazing. The conversations that we had here were amazing. So I think we can keep the discussion going. And I think one thing that the project is very good at is holding all these different approaches to thinking about welding, to thinking about technology. So the collective itself is very far from homogeneous. Like everyone has their own kind of approach, their own practice, their own way of thinking, also their own way of what welding means to them. And I think that's been quite nice.
Tell them about the reading group.
There's a reading group.
Oh yeah, there's
There
a
it
reading
is.
group.
That's what I was hoping for.
We're reading Making Sense by Simon Penny.
Yeah,
Every 2 weeks.
our collaborator, Alexandre Saunier, who's not here anymore, but who was part, has been organizing a reading group every 2 weeks. Right now we're reading Making Sense by Simon Penny, which talks about the kind of disembodiment of like the brain and the body, the mind and the body, and into the histories of cybernetics and computational systems.
And skills, embodied skills.
It's really fun. It's a great book. So if you want to join, feel free.
And how do people join?
Yeah,
Are you
that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
How do we
Do you want to give them your like we
Um,
have an email, but I've never checked it.
Maybe.
Oh,
So
do you
what
think we have
wanna
so
do?
much like fan messages? That we
I don't know.
We don't know after this. This is pretty packed room.
it's like never check the emails. Like we're very welcoming.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
message us.
But what was it?
Carrier pigeon.
Next January, we'll be back in Berlin for CTM Transmediale for the second time, and then showing the work. We had a 2-year trajectory going into this,
Yeah.
which is pretty incredible for a project that's as experimental as this. But some of this is just Marice as an amazing producer and a MUTEC curator, just like working the magic. So that's pretty great. And the reason we have so many people in this image is last December we put out last fall we put out an open call. So artists from all over the place said, yeah, we want to be in Berlin with you for 4 days and then be part of the open studio, which is where I met Jarl for the first time. And did you come to Berlin? Okay, yeah, okay, I didn't think so. So it is it's social, like it's building a social world.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so how can people get in touch?
You could always like use Instagram as
You can
Yeah.
use
Oh, okay,
Instagram.
So
Follow us on Instagram.
Instagram could be an
Follow
easy way out.
Marice.
We don't have a welding AI Instagram, but we have personal Instagrams.
All right.
that's-
So
Or
you
you
got to
can-
connect
Farmers.
with the actual bodies that are kind of making
come,
the project.
Come talk to us
happen.
and get our...
Yeah,
No,
talk to
I think
us.
I'm looking at the
Yeah.
blinking timer here, and I think as a last note, I would like to really distinctively show gratitude to the project and the work, and invoke this image. In 2020, there was a big kind of cargo ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal. I don't know if you remember that. And then there's an iconic image of this little tractor that was trying to like carve out the way. And to me, that seems like AI as an industry is now that big ship stuck in this narrative closure. And the work that you're doing, because large language models are very large, the infrastructure is really powerful, extractive. You are that little tractor, and we're rooting for you, and it works in the end. It liberates the vessel.
That's beautiful. I hope.
I really would like to show the gratitude for like such wonderful minds and such a kind of longer project that is sustaining. And I know the material realities of keeping that work alive are quite difficult. So I would like to show gratitude and
Thanks to you, and I want to show gratitude, or like us want to show gratitude for Fiber, like inviting us, 4D Sound inviting us to like do weird experiments for. It's quite a sight when we enter spaces, because we break them and we misuse them. Like at Monom, we had like 10 people jamming on a 4D sound system that usually is controlled by one person. So that was wild in its own. Yeah. And we had like 15 people putting sound in the system at the same time. So thank you for putting up with us.
Yeah.
And thank you for putting on a conference on like wildness,
Wilding.
because we're like we had the wilding prompt, and since like a year and a half we're trying to figure out what the hell we mean, and like Fiber did like an amazing job of kind of giving us a lot of ideas of what that could actually mean and having the conversation. So thank you, Allegra, thank you, y'all, thank you for the whole team, the volunteers, want to thank my mom.
All right. No. So big round of applause. Thanks a lot.